Welcome on back to This Could Be Better. I have attempted to record this video once before, but things happen. So, round two, let's hope I remember what I said. This episode is about Acolytes of Entropy by Ethereal Void. This was a very obvious follow-up to Disciples of the Void. This album is where the band, I want to say, found its sound, but then kind of immediately evolved to something different. But Ethereal Void always sounds like Ethereal Void, I think. But this was definitely the first album where it was like, wow, okay, I see what this is about. Despite that, there are some problems with this album. To put it briefly, a lot of the songs aren't super memorable, and I think the band still lacked direction. Now, Immaculate is my favorite song. I've been very vocal about that. I don't think the band has done better than that still. And Fear Me was interesting because it was the first and only song to really use like a deathcore influence. And despite me at the time thinking that that counted negatively in its favor, I think it brought more emotion than songs in this band generally do, with the exception of the ballads, like Through Sorrow and I guess Lost, mostly Through Sorrow, where off of Disciples of the Void, that song also kind of portrays an actual emotional energy, and I think people picked up on that, and that's the same as with Fear Me. Even though a deathcore influence on an album like this would be a negative thing, it expressed the emotion well enough that I think it did it justice. But there's just a lot of forgettable stuff on this album. Listening back, the production isn't quite as bad as I thought it would be, but it's definitely getting to that era where it starts being like, you can very clearly tell this was made by amateurs. This is also going to be where I start to not really remember what we were thinking at the time, because this goes back several years, and it seems like all of these songs had different goals. I remember the start of track 2, Logan just wanted it to be this stupid, shameless, comically over-the-top drum intro. And like, you know, I like having fun. I don't like having fun. But I don't like taking things so far that you can tell just the average person listens to it and is like, what? Like, it's fine if it's like very, very subtle, kind of a little wink wink, but it has to be fucking subtle. Even Metropolis 2 was not subtle enough for me, and I think most people don't understand or don't hear any irony in that song. You know, it's kind of interesting because every single song on this album is like a sampling of a different thing, and I know, as I've said before, some people will think that that's a pro. I never do. I think that it just means the stuff wasn't refined enough. Yeah, Immaculate Destroyer is like an absolute groove fest. The structure is very simplistic, but it's just so powerful and just so good. Spiritual Eradication is song 2, and that's, I don't know, it's more forgettable. It's like brutal. I don't need to go through this track by track. Tombs is the one I wrote. People kind of seem to like it, but it's also just a completely different feel. It's just like every song kind of pulls in a different direction. This was also the first release that Nemesis was on, and I don't think his contributions are bad by any means or anything like that. He wasn't on all of the songs, and I don't know. I don't think it matters too much for consistency, but I do think that when his playing shows up, it's very distinctly his playing, and the fact that it was only on some songs it's not bad, but it does further add to the inconsistencies, is what I'll say. It's not like, oh, this is terrible and it fucks everything up. It's nothing like that. It's just, I think it serves to further contrast these already contrasting songs on what is supposed to be a coherent release. I also have to mention Void Absolute, the closing track. This was basically Spotify is stupid for many, many reasons. But one of the reasons that it's particularly stupid is that it prioritizes albums as release formats. When you go to an artist's page, it will show you the latest single and it will show you albums. It will not show you EPs at all, actually, unless you go to the full discography, right? And the stupid thing is, the whole platform emphasizes playlists and singles. It rewards you for doing those things. It prioritizes albums on the artist page, but on the entire infrastructure of the platform, it doesn't. And it's even worse for EPs. EPs do not fucking exist. It's more practical to put together a song of like an EP of 6 tracks, all of them being singles, than it is to make a whole ass album, because nobody's gonna listen to a whole album, they're just gonna listen to singles. But then it fucking buries EPs. It's so stupid. So what we did is like, okay, when we finished our album, which is, okay, how many minutes do we need to turn this EP into a full album for it to show up on Spotify? Okay, we're just gonna get Logan's synthesizer to just make what is essentially white noise, just ambient noise to fill that up. Remember when all YouTube videos started being 10 minutes and 1 second because they've restructured ads, and so YouTube videos that would have been like 4 or 5 minutes, they just dragged out to 10 minutes with just filler. That's what we did so that our fucking release wouldn't just get buried when we went to our artist page. So regardless of the motivation, that isn't music, obviously. It's a fucking waste of time. And Logan wanted to make it even longer because, again, you know, Logan's like a fucking memer, and he's just like, if we can make this like 20 fucking minutes, and I was like, no, like I cut it down. I tried to make it artistic. I didn't just like splice in noise. Like there's some flow to it, there's some structure to it, but it's just ambient noise so that the release showed up as an album so it didn't get buried in Spotify. So it's a scam. Like it's not good, compelling music, right? You listen to Loss and then you turn it off. It's just, I have to say that because it's on the album, and regardless of our motivations, it's on the album. I think this album is on the cusp of where the production is almost so bad it takes you out of it, but because it's like a dumb death metal, there's more leniency there. The biggest thing for me, my personal problem with this album, is the same thing that I criticize a lot of albums for: lack of genre definition and direction, and songs not being particularly memorable. Really, Immaculate and Fear Me are the only memorable songs on this album, and every single song, more or less, is a different death metal subgenre, or at least a different feel, and to me that's a bad thing. I think that's all I had. Again, I tried recording this video before, so I'm kind of like burnt out of this album. It's not going to have as much energy as it did before. Gonna give this one on a scale of 0 to 1, being it's cringe, and if you like it, I'll kill you and you're wrong, and 10 being it's literally perfect. 7.5 or an 8. I just don't like the inconsistency. I don't think there's as many mix problems as there is in Disciples. Disciples is a whole other thing. Disciples sounds terrible. And whether that's a good thing or not, that's up to you to decide. But yeah, not really too much to say about this one. Yeah.